I'm Adrian Ghobrial. In my hand are a detailed statement of facts of the atrocities carried out by serial killer Bruce McArthur. This was read inside a courtroom today by Toronto's lead Crown prosecutor, Michael Cantlin. But before he began, he addressed the public in the courtroom with a warning. And that's where we begin tonight, with a warning. The details you're about to hear are disturbing. You're going to hear how Bruce McArthur killed 8 men and what he did with their bodies afterwards.
I mean, you watch all these crime shows. I mean, just to be ignorant for a minute, like you watch all these crime shows, you hear about this happening elsewhere, but then when you're actually sitting down in a real life case, listening to these details, it's different when you're sitting in person listening to all of it.
The lineup outside the University Courthouse stretched dozens deep this morning, some here for jury duty, others to pack the largest courtroom in Ontario to hear Toronto's lead Crown prosecutor read out the deranged actions of a serial killer.
It was shocking, surprising, heavy, all at the same time. It was just, you're sitting there speechless.
Today, while Bruce McArthur sat looking straight ahead, the court learned that the serial killer murdered most of his victims in the bedroom of his apartment on Thorncliffe Park Drive. His murder weapon of choice, this metal bar that he'd used to tighten a rope around the necks of his victims. The weapon was located under the seat of his red Dodge minivan. McArthur averaged about 2 murders a year. Evidence shows that McArthur's victims all had ties to Toronto's LGBTQ community. Some made contact with McArthur through a dating app. Most had traits of victimization that made their whereabouts hard to detect. Some lacked stable housing. The court heard today that McArthur sought out and exploited these. As vile as the murders were, McArthur also conducted post-offense rituals that included staging his victims' bodies and taking pictures of them. Police located 9 subfolders on a USB drive in McArthur's apartment, 8 folders for each of the men he murdered, and a 9th folder for a man named John, who police found tied to McArthur's bed, still alive, the day police arrested Bruce McArthur. After killing his victims, he would stage many of their bodies. Multiple men were photographed naked, wearing only this fur hat and fur coat. Some had an unlit cigar placed in their mouths. McArthur would also shave the beards and heads of his victims after he murdered them. Police found the hair of McArthur's victims in these Ziploc bags in the shed of a home on Moore Avenue, south of Mount Pleasant.
There's a level of significant monstrosity there, I think, right? That you would go to the extent of staging somebody and choking them and killing them and then proceed to do whatever else that you were doing.
Haran Vijayanathan, the executive director of the Alliance for South Asian AIDS Prevention, brought the mother, brother, and brother-in-law of victim Krushna Kanagaratnam to court today.
And they're processing it all. I don't know that they were able to understand everything, but they're starting to process it. This is the first time that they're going through this as well, and English not being their first language and having to have an interpreter there. I don't know. They're listening and processing, so I don't know if they have any opportunities to feel. I think that's going to come over the next few days, and I'll certainly be in touch with them to see how they're doing and make sure that they're getting the supports that they need.
This is a case that has affected almost everyone who's close to it. Today, Crown Prosecutor Michael Cantlin's voice began to crack as he read out the names of the 8 victims killed by Bruce McArthur. This afternoon, we heard victim impact statements from victims' families and their friends. We're going to have more on that ahead on City News. I'm Adrian Ghobrial. Earlier on City News, we told you how today, inside the University Avenue courts, how we learned in detail how Bruce McArthur killed 8 men. We learned what the serial killer did with their bodies afterwards, how he staged them, and even took photographs. We also heard victim impact statements from both family and friends of victims. Earlier today, I spoke with Haran Vijayanathan. He prepared a victim impact statement for both the LGBTQ communities and the South Asian community. He says it was difficult both emotionally and technically.
We didn't have much of a turnaround time to sit down and process it, so I received the document Tuesday evening and I filled it out and sent it off for review and board approval and sent it in. So we really talk about what we actually heard in the community through our one-on-one sessions, or people just emailing us, or folks in our group sessions that we've offered after these trials, just for a space for people to come in and just share their thoughts and feelings. And so we talked about the anxiety that is caused in people in terms of going into social situations or dating. We talk about the mental health issues that people are facing as a result of it, like with depression and anxiety, building up for them, their lack of trust within the community. It's really the way we treat refugees into this country. So talking about all those things is what we put in the impact statement. And again, I didn't have much time to process that as I was writing, because I was just writing it to get it in on time for submission. But hearing it being read tomorrow, I think it'll be a different thing. And again, these community and victim impact statements is an opportunity for community voices and victim voices to be heard and humanized. And so I think it's a really important part of the process, whether that's taken into consideration or not, but it is important. It is difficult because, you're talking about experiences of individuals and you're trying to do it in a way that is not going to be accusatory or, speaking ill of Mr. McArthur. But, you have to really design it in a way. So, all of the emotions that you want to put into it, you can't put into it, unfortunately, but you can put some of it, certainly, in better ways.
Vijay Anathan's victim impact statement will be read out here tomorrow at the University Avenue courts. 2 more days have been set aside for the serial killer sentencing hearing. We're going to hear submissions from both the prosecution and the defense, and eventually a sentence for Bruce McArthur.